Hi, my name is Molly McCarthy-Cunfer and I work for the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, Division of Sportfish. Today I'm going to show you how to make earrings out of fly tying equipment. But before we get started, let's take a look at the materials. The first materials I have are some feathers. You can choose any feathers that you want. This is just a selection of what I found and thought to be interesting. I have a vise so that I can make my earring set on it. I have a pair of scissors, a whip finishing tool. I also have some head cement. You don't have to use this, but it's nice to tie the earring together, and a bobbin with a thread color that matches the feathers that I've chosen. And finally, you want to make sure that you have eye pins to tie your earring on. You can also use a hook if you choose, but then you will have to cut the barb off. Finally, you want to have a fish hook ear wire that looks good with the color selection that you've chosen. The first thing I did was pre-cut my eye pin. That way I don't have as much pin to work around. I'm going to position this eye pin in my vise. Once the eye pin's in the vise, I can grab my bobbin and thread and start by creating a thread base. And just like any other thread base, you want to make sure that you are wrapping in that leading piece of thread. Okay, so I have my thread base. I'm going to trim off the excess thread. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do now that I have my thread base is start by putting my first feather in. Here it is. I'm going to pull some of these excess fuzzies off of it so that I can use the shank of the feather to tie right into my earring. I'm going to put this feather on the shank and I'm going to tie it in with my thread. Make sure to hold the feather tight as you're doing this because it will want to move around. Okay, so I have my feather tied in. I am going to trim off this piece of the shank that I'm not going to be using. So I've chosen a second feather and I'm going to place this feather on top of the one that I just tied in. And I'm going to do the exact same thing. And be careful with how hard you're pulling. If you're pulling down on the bobbin as you're going, you might bend your eye pin. That feather is pretty well tied in. So the next thing I'm going to do is just trim that excess piece of shank off. So I'm ready for my next step. So the next thing I've chosen to add are some ostrich and peacock strands. I think they'll add a cool texture. So I'm going to lay these right on top. And again, you're going to have to hold it in place and adjust them in the manner that I want them to hang. And you can see I have some excess that I'll trim off later. And I'm very heavy on my thread. Other people are not this heavy on their thread. And then I'm going to trim the tops since they're already tied in. So the final thing I'm going to add is a piece of mallard speculum to add a purple accent. And I'm going to tie this in with the thread. This is going to be the closest to the eye pin so that it covers up some of that thread that I've used over time. And you can readjust them as you go or at the end. So this is tied in and I'm happy with how it looks. So I'm going to cut off the excess. And you can always clean it up a little bit as you go. Just don't cut your thread. Okay, so this is tied in and I'm happy with how it looks. So the final step is to add a whip finish, or you can also hand tie this. It is up to you. Okay, I'm content with how much that's tied in, so I'm going to slide this off of here. And I'm a little clunky with fly tying equipment because I only use it when I make earrings. I'm going to cut my thread now. I'm now going to apply some head cement so everything stays together. This comes in small bottles. It comes like this and you can use a toothpick or a little wad. It's important that you don't get head cement into the eye pin hole because then you will not be able to thread your fish hook ear wire through it. If you do get a little bit through there, just make sure that you move it off before it solidifies. So now that my fly tying part of this is complete, I'm going to compose the whole thing. It's the last step. So I have my fish hook ear wire, and I'm going to thread it through the hole in the eye pin. You are going to want to close this so that your hard work doesn't go to waste. So just pinch this shut with a pair of pliers, or I have my pair of scissors today that I will use. So here is one of the finished products. There's still some leftover eye pin, so you can actually trim this all the way back to where your thread base is. We now have a nice pair of fly earrings that make a great gift for friends, family, or ourselves. We hope that you enjoyed this video today and that you make yourself lots of beautiful earrings for the future. Thanks for joining us.